They say time is just a number. But what if the year you were born wasn't random? What if hidden in that number was a silent force still shaping your emotions, your relationships, even your repeated challenges? You may think your past is behind you, but your birth year may be whispering a pattern you haven't fully noticed yet. Think about this. Why do some people, no matter how hard they try, seem to circle back to the same lessons, the same kind of heartbreak, the same anxiety, the same voice inside that says, "You're not enough"? Despite therapy, change of jobs, new relationships, something deeper seems to tug us back. Could it be that we're not just living our lives, but reliving a script that started before we even had a choice? In Buddhist philosophy, time isn't linear, it's karmic. That means what happened long ago, including the moment of your birth, carries energetic imprints. And while karma is often misunderstood as punishment or destiny, it's more accurately described as momentum. Imagine a river current. It flows a certain way unless a conscious effort redirects it. Your birth year holds clues to that current. But let's make this practical. If you were born in 1975 or 1983 or 1999, why do those years matter now? It's not just about global events or pop culture nostalgia. There's a deeper layer. The vibrations of that time influence your core tendencies, your desires, your insecurities, your karmic lessons. Some of these influences are deeply personal, shaped by your actions in previous lives, if you believe in reincarnation. Others are collective, carried by your generation's shared experience. Even modern psychology supports the idea that early imprinting, the environment we were born into, affects our unconscious blueprint. Carl Jung called it the collective unconscious. Neuroscience refers to it as developmental wiring. But Buddhist insight goes one step further. It teaches that the soul chooses when and where to be born in order to work through unfinished patterns. Your birth year, then, isn't just a date. It's a spiritual doorway. This doorway opens into the field of numerological energy. And here's where things get interesting. The last digit of your birth year, whether it's a 3, a 7, a 9, carries symbolic weight. In both Eastern and Western traditions, numbers are not just tools for counting. They represent archetypal forces, frequencies of learning, mirrors of karma. For example, a final digit of May 1st signals a life path of self-mastery and independence. A final digit of May 6th point to themes of love, care, and emotional entanglement. Each number, like a spiritual compass, helps you make sense of why your life feels the way it does. And yet, this isn't about prediction. This is about awareness. You are not a number, but your number can reveal something hidden about your soul's journey, a kind of symbolic GPS. And when you become aware of the road you've been unconsciously walking, you finally gain the power to choose a new direction. So, before we explore what each number means, pause and consider this. What if you've been living out a pattern you didn't even know you agreed to? What if the first step to change isn't to fight the current, but to understand the river you're in? This journey isn't about fate. It's about freedom through clarity. And it begins by looking again, not just at your life, but at the year it quietly began. The last digit of your birth year, more than coincidence. At first glance, the final digit of your birth year might seem trivial, a mere numerical coincidence with no meaning beyond a calendar label. But if you look with deeper eyes, you'll find something remarkable. That small number holds a subtle frequency, a kind of signature that has quietly echoed throughout your life. You may not have noticed it, but it has been shaping your decisions, your emotional patterns, and even your deepest questions about who you are meant to become. In both ancient Eastern philosophies and modern metaphysical systems, numbers are more than counting tools. They are archetypes, universal symbols that carry meaning far beyond the surface. From Taoist cosmology to Pythagorean mysticism, from the structure of DNA to the harmonics of music, Numbers are woven into the very architecture of reality. They don't just describe the world, they reflect it, mirror it, guide it. And the number at the end of your birth year is one of those mirrors. This single digit, often overlooked, represents a vibrational theme, an energetic fingerprint that resonates through your personality, your challenges, and your purpose. Think of it like a background melody playing behind every scene in your life. You might not always hear it clearly, but it's been there since the day you were born, influencing your rhythm, your pace, your internal compass. And when you learn to listen to it, a strange thing happens. Your life begins to make more sense. The repeated struggles stop feeling random. The emotional loops reveal themselves as invitations to evolve, not curses to endure. In Buddhist thought, everything is interconnected, and every pattern carries a cause. Nothing arises without a seed, and nothing continues without conditions. That means if your life has repeated certain patterns, cycles of control, abandonment, insecurity, ambition, or people-pleasing, these are not just psychological issues. They are karmic waves. The final digit of your birth year acts as a symbolic condensation of that karmic tendency. It's not the cause itself, but it helps you name the shape of what your soul came to work with in this lifetime. Take, for example, someone born in 1984. The last digit, 4, is associated across many spiritual systems with structure, discipline, and control. It suggests a karmic path of learning how to build, not just outer stability, but inner resilience. Now imagine that person constantly struggling with either chaos or perfectionism. They either resist structure altogether or become rigidly attached to it. Without self-awareness, these patterns feel confusing or frustrating. But when viewed through the lens of their karmic number, they begin to understand. This is not punishment. It is the soul's curriculum. This is where numerology becomes not superstition, but spiritual psychology. It gives language to the quiet rhythms of our being. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." In this context, your birth number, especially that final digit, is a tool for bringing the unconscious into the light. Not so you can predict your future, but so you can understand the tendencies that have quietly shaped your past. From a Buddhist lens, this awareness is the beginning of liberation. Karma is not fixed. It is dynamic, shaped moment by moment through attention and intention. The moment you recognize a karmic pattern is the moment you are no longer fully bound by it. And understanding your birth digit is like finding a symbol carved into your soul's map, a reminder of where you've been, what you're carrying, and where freedom might begin. To be clear, this isn't about boxing people into categories or reducing the richness of life to a number. It's about awakening to a part of yourself that was already speaking, but in a language you hadn't yet learned to understand. That last digit is just one note in your song, but sometimes one note is all it takes to find the key. So look again. What is the last digit of your birth year? What energy might it hold? What patterns has it echoed in your journey so far? And most importantly, are you willing to explore what it's trying to teach you? Because awareness is not just clarity, it is power. And when you see the karmic melody playing in the background of your life, you don't have to keep dancing to it unconsciously. You can choose your next step with wisdom, with presence, and with compassion for the journey that brought you here. What each final digit, 0 to 9, reveals about your life pattern. At first, the idea that a single digit, the last one in your birth year, could offer meaningful insight into your life may seem unlikely. But once you begin to observe how patterns repeat across lifetimes and generations, you begin to understand. Life is never random. Every number, every symbol, every resonance carries meaning. In both Buddhist wisdom and ancient numerological systems, this digit reflects more than a point in time. It offers a glimpse into your soul's curriculum. the lessons it chose to explore and transform in this life. When we look at the last digit of your birth year, we're not defining who you are. We're revealing a karmic theme, a subtle but persistent undercurrent in your behavior, desires, struggles, and growth. These digits, from 0 to 9, are not boxes to limit you. They are mirrors, helping you see the energies you've been unconsciously carrying. As the Buddha said, "With our thoughts, we make the world." These digits reflect the tendencies that shape your thoughts, your intentions, and the world they create. If your birth year ends in 0, you carry the energy of wholeness and reset. 0 is both the beginning and the end. People born under this vibration often walk through cycles of endings and rebirths. They may carry ancestral karmas, not just personal struggles, but echoes from family lines. Their spiritual task is integration, learning to hold contradictions, to find peace in the empty spaces, and to lead others through transformation. Their challenge is avoidance, a tendency to disappear when things become uncomfortable or to dissolve into others' expectations. But when awakened, they embody deep presence, a quiet power that helps others release, heal, and begin again. Those born in years ending in 1 carry the energy of independence and new beginnings. The number 1 is the seed, the first spark, the flame that initiates the journey. These individuals are often natural leaders, innovators, or pathmakers. But the karmic lesson here is to understand the balance between self and others. In past lives, they may have experienced dominance or dependency, and now must learn self-leadership without isolation. Their struggle often lies in pride, control, or loneliness. Yet their strength is in forging new paths with courage and authenticity. Their soul is learning to rise, not by being first, but by being true. If your year ends in 2, you embody the frequency of sensitivity, connection, and harmony. 2 is the number of duality, relationship, and balance. You likely have an empathic nature, feel deeply, and are tuned into the emotional field around you. But this comes with karmic challenges, enmeshment, people-pleasing, or difficulty setting boundaries. You may have sacrificed your voice in the past for peace or validation. This life invites you to cultivate inner stability so you don't lose yourself in the waves of others. Your strength lies in your heart, your listening, and your gift for healing conflict. But first, you must learn to honor your own voice. Those born under the final digit 3 are the expressive souls, artists, storytellers, communicators. 3 is the number of joy, creation, and movement. It carries a playful, childlike frequency, but also a shadow, the tendency to avoid depth. Your karmic path may include lessons around authenticity, learning to let go of the mask of performance and embrace vulnerability. In past lives, you may have used charm to distract or entertain, but this life calls you to let your expression carry truth. You're here not just to entertain, but to awaken. When you align your voice with purpose, you uplift others with clarity, warmth, and vision. If your last digit is 4, your soul carries the vibration of structure, responsibility, and discipline. 4 is the builder's number, rooted in form, foundation, and reliability. You may naturally seek order, security, and logic. In this life, you are called to build something real, whether it's a career, a community, or inner resilience. But the challenge lies in rigidity. You may grip too tightly to control, resist change, or measure your worth by productivity. From a Buddhist view, this is the grasping mind, the clinging that creates suffering. Your freedom lies in balancing discipline with surrender. Build, but build with love, not fear. For those with a final digit of 5, life is a quest. You carry the energy of freedom, exploration, and change. 5 is the number of experience, sensuality, and motion. Your soul seeks variety, adventure, and growth. In past lives, you may have been restricted, trapped in roles, routines, or belief systems. Now, you long to break free. But the danger is scattering your energy or running from commitment. True freedom, as Buddhist teaching reminds us, comes not from novelty but from presence. Your soul is learning to root your wings, to find depth in experience, not just distraction. Focused curiosity becomes wisdom. Restless movement becomes the dance of awakening. A birth year ending in 6 speaks of service, compassion, and responsibility. 6 is the nurturer, the healer, the one who gives without being asked. You likely feel a strong pull to care for others, family, community, even strangers. But karmically, this can become martyrdom. You may confuse love with sacrifice and struggle to say no without guilt. In past lives, perhaps you were overly controlling in the name of care or neglected your role entirely. Now, your path is balance. You must learn that compassion without boundaries is depletion. The Buddha taught, you, yourself, as much as anyone in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. This is your mantra. Your love is sacred, but so is your rest. If your year ends in 7, your soul is that of a seeker. 7 is the mystic's number, reflective, analytical, curious. You may have an inner world rich with thought and vision, and a longing to understand the truth behind appearances. In this life, you may be drawn to philosophy, spirituality, or science, any path that invites deep understanding. But your challenge is isolation. You may retreat into the mind and neglect the heart. From a Buddhist perspective, wisdom must be balanced with compassion. Insight without love becomes cold. You are here not just to know the truth, but to live it. Let your insight bloom not only in thought, but in presence, in being fully here, now. For those born with 8 as their final digit, the energy is about power, mastery, and material alignment. 8 is the number of ambition, leadership, and abundance. You may feel a strong drive to succeed, to lead, to make an impact. But power, when misused, becomes control. In past lives, you may have struggled with authority, either abusing it or fearing it. This life calls you to integrate power with purpose. You are not here to dominate, but to elevate. Your karma asks, will you use your gifts for ego or for service? True wealth is not just financial. It is energetic, moral, spiritual. When you align with Dharma, your leadership becomes a light in the world. Finally, if your birth year ends in 9, you are an old soul. 9 is the number of completion, wisdom, and compassion. You may carry deep emotional intelligence, a sense of collective suffering, or a quiet sadness that feels older than you are. This is not weakness, it's memory. In past lives, you've likely experienced loss, betrayal, or sacrifice. Now you are called not to repeat those wounds, but to transform them. Your gift is your heart. Your path is forgiveness. You are not here to save everyone, but to love with boundaries, to serve with clarity, and to finish what your soul began long ago. As the Buddha taught, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Release. Complete. Begin again. Each of these digits, 0 through 9, carries a unique vibration. They are not limits, but lenses. They don't define you, but they reveal what your soul came here to explore. When you bring awareness to these hidden frequencies, your life begins to shift. Patterns become teachers, struggles become maps, and suddenly, you are no longer moving blindly through repetition. You are dancing consciously with your own evolution. Karma by generation. What era you were born into means spiritually. When you were born is not just a date on a calendar. It's an energetic doorway into a larger story, one that transcends your individual life and connects you to the spiritual currents of an entire generation. In Buddhist thought, karma is not limited to the personal. It is collective as well, entire societies, families, and time periods carry karmic momentum, patterns of consciousness shaped by the intentions, fears, traumas, and wisdom of those who came before. This means your birth era offers more than just nostalgia or historical context. It offers insight into the karmic field you incarnated into and the spiritual lessons you were called to confront alongside millions of others. Each generation carries a specific vibration, a shared curriculum, if you will. Just as a school year has a theme and a syllabus, so too does the era you were born into. This is not about judging a generation as good or bad, enlightened or lost. Rather, it's about recognizing that your soul chose a specific time for a reason. You came not randomly, but with the precise wisdom needed to navigate the spiritual terrain of that epoch. And understanding that terrain can reveal not only why you think and feel the way you do, but what the deeper purpose of your lifetime might be. For example, those born in the wake of World War II, the silent generation, often carry a karmic pattern of duty, restraint, and stoicism. They were raised in the shadow of global trauma, during a time when survival was paramount and emotional expression was often suppressed. The spiritual lesson here is about healing the wound of silence, learning that strength does not come from suppression, but from authentic connection. This generation is often called to rediscover the heart, to soften into vulnerability, and to bridge their discipline with compassion. Baby boomers, born into post-war optimism and expansion, were raised with a sense of possibility and mission. But karmically, they also inherited the burden of material growth, consumerism, and cultural dominance. Their spiritual challenge is often one of letting go of ego, control, and the illusion that external success equates to fulfillment. Many in this generation, later in life, feel a deep longing to reconnect with meaning beyond achievement. Their path is one of awakening from the trance of progress and rediscovering inner purpose. Generation X came of age amidst the rise of divorce, technology, and globalization. They often bear a karma of disillusionment, seeing through the cracks in societal promises. Spiritually, they are bridge builders, holding the wisdom of skepticism while yearning for authenticity. Their sole task is to trust again, to believe that meaning is possible even when systems fail. They are often the quiet warriors of transformation, doing inner work without recognition, learning to heal themselves so future generations inherit less pain. Millennials were born into rapid technological change, environmental crisis, and shifting identities. Karmically, they are the generation of awakening, not because they are more enlightened, but because their suffering is more visible. The pressures of achievement, digital life, and social fragmentation have exposed old wounds. Their spiritual mission is to remember the sacred within a world obsessed with the surface, to unplug not just from devices, but from inherited beliefs, to build new systems rooted in presence, equity, and soul. Generation Z carries a unique kind of clarity. Born into chaos, climate anxiety, and spiritual hunger, they arrive with open eyes and open wounds. Their karma is one of disruption and realignment. They are not here to continue old structures, but to question everything. Their spiritual path is radical authenticity, daring to be emotionally transparent in a world of filters, to be still in a world of speed, to care in a world grown numb. They are both deeply sensitive and fiercely awake, often feeling the pain of the planet as their own. Each generation's karma interacts with the others. We don't evolve in isolation. We are mirrors for each other's blind spots. The rigidity of elders can awaken the innovation of youth. The passion of youth can soften into wisdom through the patience of age. In Buddhist terms, this is interbeing, the truth that we arise together, we suffer together, and we wake up together. Your generation is not just your cohort. It's your sangha, your spiritual community, whether you like them or not. This view helps us move beyond blame. It's easy to say, they ruined everything, or they don't understand. But karma is not a weapon. It's a mirror. If you were born into a time of noise, perhaps your calling is to be still. If you were born into scarcity, perhaps your task is to embody generosity. If you inherited anger, perhaps you are the one to end it. As Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl wrote, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose. And it is in that space, the space of generational awareness, that we begin to choose differently. Spiritual awakening in this context is not just individual. It is intergenerational healing. It is saying, I see the trauma my grandparents never spoke of. I see the fear my parents carried. I see the confusion my peers inherited. And I choose to meet it with mindfulness. I choose to be the interruption. The pattern stops here, not with rejection, but with compassion. That's the deeper invitation. To become aware not only of your personal karma, but of the collective waves that brought you here. To ask not only, who am I? But what time did I come for? And then, to live as a conscious participant, not a passive product, of your generation's spiritual story. From a Buddhist lens, this awareness does not lead to judgment or shame. It leads to responsibility, the kind rooted in love, not burden. You are not here to fix everyone, but you can be a light, a presence, a choice. And when one person wakes up inside a generation, it sends ripples far beyond their lifetime. So take a moment. Reflect on the era that shaped you. The music, the fears, the values, the questions. What karma might your generation carry? What wound are you here to heal? Not just for yourself, but for the many. Your birth was not random. It was a response, a soul's answer to the question, what is needed now? And the world, your generation, is waiting for your awakened response. Your year is not your fate. Hidden patterns you can break. It's tempting to believe that the year you were born defines your life, like a cosmic brand you're fated to wear forever. In numerology, and even in some spiritual systems, it's common to see your birth year as a blueprint, a map of your personality, tendencies, or destiny. But from a Buddhist perspective, that view is only half the truth. Yes, your birth year holds meaning. Yes, the energy of that moment carries echoes of the karmic momentum you stepped into. But it is not your fate. It is your starting point. And more importantly, it is a mirror. When we're told, you're a certain way because you were born in a certain time, it can feel both validating and limiting. It explains some patterns, but it also risks becoming an excuse. I've always struggled with commitment because I was born in the 80s. I have a hard time trusting people. Must be my karmic number. These ideas can offer insight, but if held too tightly, they can become cages. The deeper truth is that while your birth year reflects certain energetic patterns, it doesn't imprison you in them. Buddhism teaches that everything is impermanent, including identity, including karma. The point is not to reject your patterns, but to recognize them with awareness. Because awareness is the first moment of liberation. When you see a recurring issue, maybe you always attract emotionally unavailable partners or sabotage yourself just before success, you're not doomed. You're standing at the doorway. You are witnessing your conditioned karma, which means you are no longer being controlled by it unconsciously. And that shift in awareness, though subtle, is the birthplace of freedom. Let's take a simple metaphor. Imagine your birth year like a river you were born into. It has a current, a direction. Maybe it's calm. Maybe it's stormy. Maybe it's full of beauty but also hidden rocks. You didn't choose the river, but you are not the river. You are the swimmer. The river may influence your path, but once you become conscious of its currents, you can start to navigate with clarity. You can float, dive, swim across. You might even climb ashore and find a new river altogether. The Buddhist teaching of karma, unlike fatalistic interpretations, emphasizes volition, your capacity to choose differently. Karma is not a life sentence. It is a flow of causes and conditions, ever shifting based on your present intentions. The past sets the stage, but the present holds the pen. Your birth year tells you what kind of stage you stepped onto. But what kind of play you perform, that's your choice. And that choice is renewed in every breath, every response, every pause before a reaction. In the West, the idea of personal growth often focuses on self-improvement. Fix what's wrong. Upgrade your habits. Optimize your life. From a Buddhist lens, growth is not about fixing. It's about seeing. You don't fix your birth year. You understand it. You don't fight your karmic tendencies. You become intimate with them, like watching a movie you've seen a dozen times, until you finally notice the moment where the plot always turns. That's when you write a new ending. This is why even in modern psychology, there's a renewed focus on awareness. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This insight mirrors Buddhist wisdom. The patterns from your birth year may feel mysterious, like they run your life from the shadows. But once you shine a light of awareness on them, they lose their grip. This is not about denying the influence of your generation, your birth era, or your karmic number. These are real energies. They shape the weather of your early life, but they are not you. And more importantly, they are not your future, unless you choose to make them so. You always have the freedom to pause, to question, to respond differently. And it is in those small shifts that true transformation begins. Let's say you discover that the last digit of your birth year is 6, a number associated with care, responsibility, and the weight of service. You may realize that you've spent your life overgiving, trying to prove your worth through sacrifice. That insight might feel heavy at first, but it's also empowering. Because now, you can ask, who am I without the compulsion to be needed? What happens when I give not out of guilt, but from overflow? What would it look like to love myself as fiercely as I've loved others? Or maybe your number is 1, the energy of independence, leadership, and pride. And you've noticed a tendency to isolate, to carry everything alone. Once that pattern is named, it can be questioned. Is independence really freedom? Or is there courage in asking for help? What if your lesson is not to stand alone, but to stand as yourself even in the company of others? These aren't just philosophical questions. They are invitations. Invitations to reclaim your agency, to stop reenacting the same act in a different costume, to remember that you are not here to live out a pattern. You are here to wake up within it. And that's the deeper purpose of understanding your birth year's influence. Not to predict your fate, but to become conscious of your script, so that you can choose whether to keep it, rewrite it, or let it dissolve altogether. From this place, even astrology or numerology, if approached wisely, can become tools of reflection, not limitation. The map is not the territory. The numbers are not the soul. They are symbols, mirrors, clues. But the power always lives in the one who reads them with mindfulness, curiosity, and compassion. So if you've ever felt like your birth year defines you, remember this: it does offer insight, but it does not offer the final word. You are not a date. You are not a number. You are a field of infinite becoming. And with each conscious choice, you shift the current, not just for yourself, but for everyone downstream. You are the swimmer. The current may be strong, but awareness is stronger. Choose your stroke. Choose your direction. And above all, choose to wake up. Conclusion: look again at the year you were born. Maybe now, the year you were born doesn't feel quite so fixed. Perhaps it feels more like a doorway, one that opened the moment you entered this world, carrying echoes of generations, stories, karmic winds, and ancient seeds waiting to bloom. But that door wasn't locked. It never was. It has always been an invitation, not a prison. The truth is, Your birth year is not something to be explained once and filed away. It's a living thread woven into the tapestry of your becoming. And like any thread, it can be pulled, loosened, retied into something unexpected. What once seemed like destiny may now appear as raw material, something you can shape with patience, with presence, with care. So look again. Look again at the year you were born. See it not as the answer to who you are, but as a question life is still asking you. What patterns did it place at your feet? What lessons did it whisper into your childhood? What stories did you inherit? And which ones are you ready to release? Remember, insight is not the end. It is the beginning. The final digit of your birth year, the generation you came from, the energies you've carried, they're all part of your story. But they are not the whole story. The rest is being written every day by the choices you make, the awareness you bring, and the way you respond when the old patterns knock again. This entire journey we've walked together, through numbers, through karma, through the unseen currents of life, has not been about finding control. It's been about discovering clarity. Buddhism teaches us that liberation doesn't come from escaping our circumstances, but from seeing them with eyes wide open. When you begin to see clearly, you begin to choose freely. And that freedom is what you're walking toward now. Not freedom from your past, but freedom within it. You can honor the truth of where you came from and still take a different step. You can carry the wisdom of your generation without carrying its weight. You can feel the momentum of old karmic stories and still turn the page. Perhaps the most powerful realization is this: your life is not a script. It's a conversation between your soul and the unfolding moment. And the year you were born? It was simply the first word. So now, take a deep breath, not as someone stuck in a pattern, but as someone seeing it from above the surface. Not as someone waiting to be rescued by fate or numbers, but as someone who has always had the ability to wake up. If something you heard today struck a chord, if a number, a pattern, or a story resonated, let it sit in your heart a while. Let it guide your reflection. And if it helped you see yourself in a new light, know that others are looking for that light too. Share this with someone who might need it. It might be exactly the mirror they've been waiting for. If you found value in this journey, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, not just to follow, but to walk together as we explore more sacred patterns, ancient wisdom, and practical insight. There's so much more to uncover about past lives, ancestral karma, and the deeper meanings behind the signs we so often ignore. Every video is crafted with care, with depth, and with a quiet hope that it will help someone, somewhere, awaken a little more. So stay with us. Let this not be an ending, but a beginning. Because the year you were born was never just about the past. It was the start of a sacred unfolding, one that is still happening now.